Revival is the 9th album by rapper Eminem and the 3rd in the Relapse and Recovery trilogy. And even though I like Recovery, to be honest, I will admit that the Relapse and Recovery trilogy is probably the absolute worst thing in Eminem's entire career. And yeah, Revival is, without a doubt, the worst of the 3 albums. Throughout this entire album, it's incredibly evident that Eminem has just completely been drained of everything that made him stand out in the mainstream. He spends the entire album reusing the same formula that made his post-encore albums so popular. But the formula is incredibly tired and boring. Not to mention Marshall's lyrics lack any of the creativity that they once had. Every single song sounds like exactly what he's written about dozens of times over the last decade. But there's nothing in the lyrics, the beats, or the hooks that make them stand out above those songs. If you found him rapping about his ex-wife, his daughters, and his new love interests to be incredibly boring over the last few albums, then yeah, you're definitely going to hate this album because that's exactly all it is. The lyrics just lack any of the genius puns and punchlines that made him one of the best lyricists in the genre back in the day. And instead the album is filled to the brim with cringeworthy jokes, awkward vocal gags, and attempts at controversy that, although 10-15 years ago would have been incredibly controversial, now are incredibly tame in comparison and just don't really hit at all. Despite using incredibly talented producers on this album such as Rick Rubin, Dr. Dre and Alex the Kid, the beats on the album are just so boring and formulaic. At times the beats come off as almost one of those awful YouTube beats that people make that have loads of comments of people's terrible raps. Similar to the Marshall Mathers LP2, there are a lot of samples of big famous rock songs, but all of the samples sound jilted and just don't fit at all. Especially the awkward Joan Jett sample on the sickeningly uncomfortable love song Remind Me. As well as this, the hooks written for the albums just completely lack all the power that Eminem is trying to create. Anyone that may cringe at seeing artists such as Ed Sheeran, X-Ambassadors and Alicia Keys on the track list, yeah, definitely have a very good reason to feel that way. I was really hoping that Eminem would actually pull something off and use these artists in a way that was very unexpected and original, but no, they just do exactly what you'd expect to hear from them. The album is honestly pretty terrible all throughout. It isn't until like the last 2 tracks that things actually start to get somewhat interesting. The songs Castle and Arose are actually honestly pretty damn good. They're dark and hard hitting. It's kind of exactly what the rest of the album should have been. But even though I liked those songs, it's not worth sitting through an hour of music to get to it. Eminem has had a lot of missteps in his post-Eminem Show career, and honestly this album may be the biggest misstep of his entire career so far. It's obvious that he hasn't learned from his previous mistakes, and instead of taking all the criticism that he received on his previous albums constructively, it's obvious that he's just kind of ignored all of that and decided to just do what he wants because he thinks he's a genius. But I think in many ways this album is kind of proof that even the best things have an expiration date. And that date was December 15th. So I give Revival by Eminem a 3 out of 10.